go to the grocery store. You see a $5 cucumber. Is it a scam, or will it somehow prevent you from getting cancer? Welcome to Meg Talks Science. Let's find out. So organic food dominates the shelves of like bougie grocery stores like Whole Foods and Sprouts and Waitrose, I assume, but I've never been in one because I only lived in Scotland for 5 years. Anyway, but is organic food actually worth it? And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the term organic is actually regulated in the US, UK, and EU. So go team. It's also regulated in other countries, but according to my analytics, that's where like the vast majority of you guys live. So I thought that I would focus on those 3 places. And while regulations differ across countries, generally, if the term organic is regulated, it means that organic food uses only certain pesticides in certain amounts. It can also mean that like different herbicides and fertilizers are not used, but it does definitely depend on the country. So yeah, organic food actually does have a regulation, and it is different from non-organic food. Of course, scientifically, the word organic just means like alive or derived from life. So scientifically speaking, every food is organic because it's food, except maybe salt, I guess. Salt's inorganic. Correct me in the comments down below. I never took organic chemistry. But yeah, organic food in terms of like the food that you're eating and what you see on the shelves with the organic label is actually regulated. So since the main difference between foods that are organic and foods that are not labeled organic is the pesticide use, we should talk about what a pesticide is and whether you should be worried about eating one. So the term pesticide means something that deters a pest. The majority of the pesticides that you eat every day are in all likelihood made by a plant. That's because things like capsaicin, which makes spicy food hot, and caffeine in your coffee, those are both pesticides. Now, there are man-made pesticides used in growing food, and that is probably what you're concerned about if you are concerned about pesticides. But typically, we only eat trace amounts of them by the time that the food gets to our plate, even when we're talking about food that's not labeled as organic. And the thing is, when it comes to man-made pesticides, especially if you're like working in the industry and you apply pesticides, there are some health risks involved, like potentially cancer is one thing that I've seen. But the thing that you have to keep in mind of like you as an individual that's eating food is that there are a whole bunch of people working very, very hard to keep your food safe. They're trying to keep it safe from bugs, from bacteria, from mold, from vermin, all of which are vectors of disease, but they're also trying to keep the pesticides and the things that you consume safe as well. Because the thing is, I don't want to eat like food covered in a pesticide that gives me cancer, but I also don't want to eat a fresh batch of E. coli, which is the bacteria that gives me food poisoning. So it's all a very, very careful balancing act that lots of very smart people are constantly working on. So are organic foods, which typically have limited pesticides and like limited amounts, are they actually healthier? Now, if you learned anything from my channel so far, it's probably that answers to big questions like that are usually a bit complicated. So how would a scientist answer this question? Obviously, you could go talk to some people and ask them whether they typically buy organic foods, and then check their health metrics and compare them to people who typically don't buy organic foods and see who's healthier. But the issue with that is that organic foods are kind of branded as this health choice right now in pop culture. So people who are going to eat organic foods are probably making healthier decisions overall. So like if you're on a health kick or if you're someone who prioritizes health in general, you might buy organic, but you're also probably going to exercise, you're not going to smoke, you might eat more fruits and vegetables overall, which is going to up your fiber content, which will help your colon. So you might just be like a different population, which makes it really hard to compare across these populations. There was one study done on women in the UK that found that incidence of cancer might be lower in people who buy organic. They did find that incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was lower in women who ate organic foods more frequently. But generally, it's pretty hard to tease apart the effects of food versus overall lifestyle, such as like not smoking. Correlation and causation are very tricky here. Fortunately, one way that we can tease apart correlation and causation is with animal studies in a lab. However, you have to remember that animal studies have limited applicability to humans, and we always have to be careful about overgeneralizing from animals to humans. But in lab rats, there were effects on rats' immune systems. So like growth parameters and endocrine systems and immune systems were all things that differed between organic and non-organic cohorts of rats. And the really interesting thing about this study that I found, and remember, I link all my stuff in the description below so that you can look at it yourself. But the interesting thing from this study is that they did it across 2 generations. Basically, the mom ate non-organic food, and then the babies would also eat non-organic food. And the effects of the non-organic food were seen into the 2nd generation, and they changed across generations, which is really interesting to me. So it seems like, physiologically speaking, if we respond in a way similar to rats, there would be a difference, but overall the scientific consensus just straight up isn't there yet for humans, so there's a lot more research to be done in this field. However, when you're talking about organic foods versus foods that aren't labeled as organic, there is one notable and very interesting difference, because there is like a slight nutritional difference actually between organic and non-organic foods. And where there is a difference, it is usually in favor of the organic foods. So this is going to like show up in terms of vitamin content and antioxidants and like flavonoids. And I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but basically So I did find a review that suggested that in most studies of the nutritional differences between organic and non-organic products, the organic stuff tends to contain most of the good stuff. And the rat study that I mentioned just a minute ago kind of said the same thing, actually. There were typically more nutrients in the organic diet. So this is genuinely a point in organic food's favor. And if you only eat like 1 vegetable a day or a week, it might as well be the organic cucumber. But fruits and vegetables are so important overall that if they're not organic, I would still eat them. So is organic food good, actually? And like, it's hard to tell. We just don't have hard proof that like non-organic food is bad for you per se. So it would be hard to say that organic foods are particularly better. And of course, there are lots of complexities in this because foods can still be grown with certain pesticides. And then in the US, there are different labels for how organic something is. So if a food says made with organic, then that means that the ingredients, 70% or more of the ingredients are designated as organic. It's hard to tell whether that's going to make a difference. I just don't think that we're at the point where we know whether that would even make a difference in animals, let alone humans. So it's one of those things like wait and see. And of course, humans will always be humans about this kind of thing. Remember, you can charge more for organic foods. And some unscrupulous businessmen have learned that and kind of scammed people. The New Yorker wrote a really good, interesting piece about it where a guy in America just straight up sold non-organic foods as organic. And the key in a system like this is to keep producers honest through inspections and maintenance of the system. Unfortunately for my American friends, which includes myself, the US government is trying to like systematically disable that. So organic foods might become a little bit more meaningless in the next 4 years or so. But there are lots of good farmers out there just trying to grow good food. And I'd like to believe that most producers are being honest about whether or not they sell organic food. Personally, I don't know whether the fruit stand on the corner that I go to is organic or not because they speak German. And I'm not particularly bothered either way because it's fresh and it's good. But yeah, just remember that, like, especially if you live in the US, wash your veggies for the next 4 years because things are being systematically dismantled that otherwise would have protected you. So honestly, I was pleasantly surprised about this one. I went into this video fully ready to be like, organic food is a scam, the term is meaningless, but that is not true at all. I was told growing up that there was absolutely no difference between organic food and non-organic food. So to see some actual regulation of the term is really nice. So at the most basic level, I would say that it's not a scam because it appears that the term organic or bio in Germany actually has meaning and regulations behind it. Whether that difference is meaningful, however, is still up for scientific debate. And actually, I agree with Michael Pollan, who is a food journalist, about this. Eating fruits and vegetables is so important that I will continue eating whatever is accessible, whether it's organic, fresh, local, or not. I love my veggies. I love fruits. I'm about to make an awesome risotto with like all of the veggies that I can stick in that I can stick into it. So yeah, just eat your fruits and veggies and I think you'll be fine. So what's a good conclusion here? Basically, I would say that organic foods in countries where the word is regulated, which is where most of my audience lives according to my analytics, are different from foods without that label. They typically only use certain pesticides in certain amounts. Now remember, that doesn't mean that they're pesticide free. And they may differ in how the food is produced. So like they might be produced in a way that tries not to harm local biodiversity. But the extent to which food labeled organic is actually healthier than food not labeled organic is still being researched. There is some human correlative evidence of like lower rates of certain cancers in people who tend to eat organic food. There's some lab research in rats that suggests that like different health markers can be affected by food that is or is not organic, but causative evidence in humans is still limited. That being said, if you like organic food and if you can afford organic food, or if the closest grocery store near you sells organic food and that's what you buy, I think that's fantastic. And like there is some evidence that there's a higher nutrient content in organic food with certain markers. So like if you're gonna eat one cucumber a week, sure, buy the organic cucumber. We could very well one day see evidence that organic food is healthier. However, it is so important to eat your fruits and your veggies, and I think that's what I'm trying to say here. So like eat your fruits and veggies, guys, whether they're organic or not organic, whatever, in quantities that make you feel happy. And don't eat the fruits and veggies if they look rotten is the message here. I'm going to go eat a cucumber and maybe some risotto because that's what makes me happy. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video and stay curious. Keep asking weird questions and I will be happy to answer them. If you have anything that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye, guys.